Thank you, Stephanie and Rebecca, for that great session. Welcome to everyone to Taking Charge, Owning Your Finances and Your Future. I think I can safely say that many of us are deeply concerned about the pandemic's effects on our own economic well-being. Families are worried about their financial stability, the threat of foreclosure and debt repayment, and women who own or work in the service industry are disproportionately affected by the pandemic shutdowns, while those working from home while managing Zoom school are finding it necessary to step away from their careers, creating great uncertainty about their future earnings. I'm Deborah Rosenblum, Chief Program Officer at JWI, and as part of my portfolio of work, I develop and lead financial literacy workshops for women of all ages, from moms and teens to college women, young professionals, and women ages 40 plus. I'm honored that today, two experts in women's financial empowerment are with me to share their insights with us. Both of these women are members of JWI's exclusive cohort of Women to Watch. Michelle P. Cooper is director and co-founder of XML-W, Women's Financial Services, a division of XML Financial Group, focused on the financial needs of women. A 25-year veteran of the estate planning, tax, and finance fields, she previously worked for Merrill Lynch and U.S. Trust. Bobbi Rebell-Kaufman is a certified financial planner and host of the Financial Grown-Up with Bobbi Rebell podcast and co-host of Money with Friends and author of How to Be a Financial Grown-Up. Thank you both for sharing your time and expertise during our Women's Impact Summit. Bobbi, I'll start with you. Why is it so important for women to be financially literate?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I love being part of the programming at JWI, and it's always a pleasure to be not only with you, but also reunited with Michelle to talk to all of you today. Deborah, your introduction was really spot on because what's going on right now in our world is bringing up so many different money issues that are tied to our lives, and we're so much more conscious of it than I think we were a year ago when we were at the Women to Watch conference. It's really been amplified, and it's a really important moment to be discussing these issues. I mean, money is the foundation of so many things that are important to all of us, but especially to women. It's not only a foundation for building blocks for the lives that we want, it's also sometimes an exit strategy to the lives that we don't want and we want to be free of. It can be such a wonderful tool to get to where we want to be, and also a great resource to get away from what we don't want to be part of, whether it's a toxic job. If we have savings, it's something that we can then have the freedom and the foundation to get away from. And of course, sometimes we have relationships and it can be very hard. And having your own money is something that's so essential to having that freedom. And it can really be the most important thing at times. And that can sometimes be misunderstood. Sometimes people think of it as materialistic and greedy to have too much money. In fact, it's really about protecting yourselves and the people that you love and being able to do what is important to you and your values. And I know Michelle has a lot to add to that too.
Michelle, do you want to add to that?
I certainly do. And I also want to thank you, Deborah and Bobbi. It's wonderful to be on a panel again. I can't believe a year has gone by since we were together last December. But, if you think about what's going on during this pandemic, and I'm sure so many of you have listened to the news, 1 in 4 Americans have had problems paying their bills. And 1 in 3 Americans have had to dip into their savings. So if we look at this pandemic as a learning opportunity, I can think of so many things that we can take away from this, but I whittled it down to the top 5. And the first one is really to look at what your expenses are and what your income is. So if you go back to basics, looking at what's going out and really what's coming in, and how you do that is to look at credit card statements, bank statements, your pay stub, and getting just a handle on where your money is going. The second thing that is really important during this COVID period is becoming digital. So if we look at the stimulus checks that so many of us received, people that filed on paper had a lot of problem or issues even getting the check. And if you converted to file online, your money was direct deposited quicker. There's a lot of people on the move going to different states for a month. This is a really good time to make sure that all of your bills, statements are all accessible online. The third thing on my list is to make sure that you are negotiating with whatever vendors that you have. And this could be your mortgage company. If you're having an issue paying your mortgage, don't hide in the sand and ignore the calls or the letters. You have to speak up and communicate. If you're in a lease agreement, it's a great time to negotiate. Just yesterday, I was on the phone with Southwest Airlines for my Southwest credit card, and I reduced my annual fee less than half just by asking. And so, for any bills that you have, now is a great time to think about negotiating. Number 4 on the list is we have some extra time, and I've gotten some phone calls actually from friends and other women that I've spoken to at different events, and they want to get their arms around their finances. So, this is a great time to seek out the help of a professional. And this might be a financial advisor or a financial planner, your parents, whoever is in your life that you feel is someone that you can trust, that you can talk to and learn from. And then the fifth item on the list, we don't know what's going to happen in this pandemic. And many of us think about the future. And so while you're thinking about your future and your family, it's a good time to pull out that file, if you have one, with your estate planning documents. So take a look at your will. Is it current? Does it say what you want it to say? Make sure that your beneficiary designations on your retirement plans are up to date. Long-term care policies, disability policies, life insurance policies, make sure those are up to date. And don't delay because you never know what tomorrow might bring. I'll turn it back to you, Deborah.
Thank you both. I mean, Bobby, you spoke about some very motivating reasons to understand our money. At JWI, we teach that a woman in control of her money has more options than women who aren't in control of their money. And I think that's the big message that we're all trying to get out there. And Michelle, you've shared some wonderful ideas for new habits that we can be building now as we think about, what's happening now and what's going to happen post-COVID, hopefully, and the ways that we can be smarter about our own financial security. So thank you both. And I always like to say at JWI that something like a budget, it's not a dirty word, it's a good thing. It helps us get control of our money. And so often we're afraid of doing that, but the more that we can understand our money, the more in control we can be and the more empowered we can be. Michelle, you touched on this, but Bobby, I'm really going to turn to you now for this question. Talking about money can feel so personal and emotional, and it's something that we're reluctant to do. It feels a little bit embarrassing sometimes. So, but we all know that it's important. And Bobby, I'd just like to ask you, do you have suggestions for who women should be talking to? With whom should we be having these conversations, and some tips for how do we start those conversations?
Well, I love this question also, and it's a very appropriate question for what's going on now, because we do have an opportunity here. And I want to first clarify, Michelle was talking about talking to a professional. That is absolutely something everyone should do. The other thing that we can do during this time is we've really hit pause on so many things, and we have the time now, many of us do, to be having conversations maybe in a less frantic state, because life for many of us has slowed down. And many of us are living now in multi-generational situations where maybe we've moved in with our parents, maybe our children have moved in with us, our adult children, maybe they're, doing college from the room, in their childhood room now. And so you're around each other. And what's interesting is that a lot of us are having family dinners together that we maybe didn't have because the older children were running off to be out with their friends, and maybe they're not doing that anymore, or they were running to activities, or we were driving people around and so on. We're all home. And so that presents a nice amount of time to have these conversations with people, not only that you love and care about, but let's be honest, people that you have financial ties to. You guys are stakeholders in each other's lives, whether it's your parents, your children, and in some ways your friends. So this is a great time to be having those conversations. How to have them? Well, it does depend on your relationship with them. So it will vary, but I have a few tips. First of all, one thing you can do is ask for their advice. especially if it's somebody older, because who doesn't like to give advice? So that can open up the conversation. You can also share a story. Maybe you have a friend. Sometimes white lies can be okay in this case. And maybe there's a situation where a parent died without a will. And you can say, what should the friend do? Why do you think their parents would not have put their wishes, in writing when they know how expensive probate can be? Probate, for those who don't know, is kind of the legal process that an estate will go through if there's no will. It's basically the government's will. You don't want that. You can also think about asking them about their life, but in an indirect way about money. So you could ask them, maybe if your parents are going into retirement, are you thinking of traveling more? And then open up the conversation about how they're going to be allocating their money to make sure that they're budgeting correctly, and make sure you're very non-confrontational. And you can kind of pivot that down to your children in the other way. Maybe you have adult children that are figuring out how they want to allocate their resources. You can ask them, do you think you're going to stay in the same city for a long time? Does it make sense to rent or to buy? Do you think you're going to have roommates? And that kind of thing. And even practical solutions you can offer to help with something like, if you're worried about your parents or older relatives in technology, you can offer to help them set up online bill pay, which goes right to what Michelle was talking about. And then you'll get some insight into what's going on with them financially too, because it's a less awkward way to kind of peek into their accounts and make sure they're not being scammed. I do have a friend whose mom was recently scammed by one of those cliche scams, the Nigeria. I don't even know what happened. And she won't tell us how much money was taken, but it was significant. And it's her mother. And now not only is her mother affected, but the whole family is affected. And so this is no joke. It's a wonderful opportunity to get those conversations going about money in a non-threatening, supportive way.
I was done teaching a workshop at the University of Texas, Austin, to college students. And I said, it's really important if you have a partner, long-term partner, I said, no matter where life's going to take you, you still need to know about the person's money and check credit scores. Mm-hmm. So this one woman, she just went, oh my gosh. And she stood up and she said, I'm planning to move in tomorrow with my boyfriend. I don't know his credit score. I said, why don't you find out? So she texted him. And he said, oh boy, we need to talk. And I don't know what happened after that, if the relationship went kaput or if they moved in, but it was such it was like a life-changing moment. You could feel it. She had never thought that she actually really needed to know about his money, his values, his credit score before she could really commit to being that kind of long-term partner about that.
I have a couple things to add. Everything that Bobby said and Deborah, so on point. But one of the things I've learned in my personal life and also working with others is there's a time and a place to have these conversations. So you want to make sure that both of you are in a decent mood, even though you've been thinking about this conversation all day. If your partner, your spouse gets home from a long day, that's not the time to have the conversation. So you want to wait for a time when people are relaxed and you have kind of your list of questions handy. You're not just doing it off the cuff. So I just wanted to add that because the conversations go so much better.
I've heard that some people have date night around that, so they'll schedule it.
Yeah. But also remember, it doesn't have to be all at once. You don't have to go through everything. Just one thing at a time is enough to get started and get the conversation going. And you can say, I want to talk more about this, but let's go have fun the rest of the night. And let's come back, maybe make an appointment, send them a calendar invite and put down and say, I'm going to help you with this, and just make it about helping them. And I think that can be very, a lot less threatening and it's kind of a nice conversation. And you'd be surprised how many people do want to share and appreciate the interest that you're taking in helping them and making sure that their finances are in order.
All too often women feel that if they're not the big breadwinner, if they're not the one really earning it, that they don't have the right to be at that table. Do either of you have feelings about that?
I think that's a common feeling among certainly women, but we need to get over that, frankly. We have to continue to look ourselves in the mirror and value what we bring to the table, whether it's building the family, running the household, working in a job, taking care of our parents, dependents, whatever it is, we have to value ourselves and not feel guilty. This is about our survival, folks. Learning and understanding our financial life.
And also, you point to understanding our financial value in a sort of a very raw way. I mean, if something were to happen to you and you don't have income, that doesn't mean you're not going to need life insurance, because if something happens to you, who's going to take care of all the things that you do? I mean, just because you're not paid a salary doesn't mean that if you weren't there, someone would be paid a salary to do all those things. So it's also important to not forget that the non-breadwinner has to have life insurance and has to have all the financial pieces. You still have to have, you're going to retire. And so you have to have your IRA. And by the way, a spouse can still contribute to an IRA. There's a reason for that. And it's important that you know what's going on with everyone that you're financially tied to in terms of money that you're going to have access to for retirement. It's so important. You can't just assume that your partner is going to take care of you. You need to look at what the money is going in there, and don't assume that they're putting in the right amount. Check. Even if you're not the breadwinner, you can be the CFO of the family and be checking on all of the accounts and making sure that the maximum, hopefully if it's affordable, can go in to every account, that there's a tax advantage to, that there's a company match to, whatever it may be that it's earmarked for. Maybe it's a college fund. Make sure you're maxing those out. And that in and of itself is a really valuable financial contribution to your family. Don't assume the breadwinner is doing those things. Very often they're not.
Great point.
Yeah. And ultimately, financial literacy for women, women's economic empowerment is about gender equity. I mean, that's really what we're creating. So we're saying, even if you're home, not getting a paid job outside the home, you still have every right to be at that table and to be making those financial decisions with your partner, and to know everything that's going on with your family's finances. Michelle, so we're here today. It's JWI's Women's Impact Summit. And I would just like to ask you the question about, what is the impact when women are engaged with financial decisions? Is the impact beyond the personal? Can women's financial literacy impact the community, the world?
Women's financial literacy is at the core of our ability to make an impact in every level of our lives. So, when I think about Deborah's question, I think about being on an airplane. And when you put the mask on yourself, that's the way you are taking care of your family, because you have to be able to breathe and then take care of your children. So it can be analogized to financial literacy. You have to understand your own financial life. From there, you have power, you have choices, you have confidence, and that builds out into your community. So from a very close community, understanding how your family works, how you relate to other women. And then from a broader perspective, women that have the power to make choices can change other women's lives and have a great community impact. So to answer your question, Deborah, I think that financial literacy is at the cornerstone of living a full and complete life and being able to have a major impact in the things that you care about.
In so many ways, philanthropy, investments, there's so many ways that women's influence impacts the world.
Yes.
Thank you both. Bobby, we have 2 seconds left. Do you have anything that you want to quickly add to that?
I just want to add that as women, we're naturally givers, and giving the gift of discussing this with your friends is really important. I talked about your financial ties to your loved ones. You're also financially tied to your friends, and it's really important. If you see a friend that you suspect is going over budget, or maybe spending too much, or you're getting dragged into things, like maybe you get invited to a bachelorette party and you end up being hooked into spending more money than you were anticipating. Have those conversations. Don't be afraid to speak up. I mean, I definitely have said to friends, let's pick a different restaurant. I mean, don't be shy about that stuff, because you know what? Most people are also having this sinking feeling when they get that invite, where it's like, let's all chip in this amount of money, and then we're going to go to the restaurant, and then we're going to go for drinks after. And that's not in everyone's budget. So everyone's relationship's different. It's not always as easy depending on how you relate to these people, but it's not just about your family. Your friends sometimes can be well-meaning, but can spend your money. It's so important to just look out for them. And, like I said, maybe it's not only for you. Maybe someone in the group has less money. Maybe you can do a whisper. Let's pick a different place. things like that. Look out for each other as women and protect each other's money and don't spend frivolously. We've gotten a dose of, not having FOMO by being home. We know that our friendships and our relationships are strong. We don't need to go out for the, big bash dinner all the time. We're really happy, maybe not on Zoom. We'd love to see each other in person, but it doesn't have to be this big spending spree. You don't need to walk in with a fancy purse or the best shoes. We just love being with each other, and that's okay. And so look out for each other.
And I want to add one thing to Bobby's point, and I agree. We should make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and our friends and being aware. But the most important thing that we have to do in our financial life is to take action. And we can have these conversations all day, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to take action in your own life.
Thank you both. Thank you both. And having this conversation feels like a little piece of action because it's getting us thinking again about money and about the important conversations that we all need to have with our stakeholders, as you put it, Bobby. That was great. Our financial stakeholders. So very quickly now, one tip that each of you have for the women who are listening, who are part of our Impact Summit. What would it be, like in 3 words?
My tip is to make sure that your name is on everything. And if it's not, know why.
Great.
And my tip is to ask questions and follow up. If you don't like the answer, keep asking.
Beautiful. And mine is always have money in your own name, no matter where life takes you. So thank you. This has been a really interesting conversation, a lot of fun to reconnect with both of you, and a lot of fun to start thinking again about during COVID, like some of the positive things that we can take away from this very challenging time. And I'm excited to announce that JWI will be launching our own Financial Fitness Institute this spring, offering workshops and panels like this and more resources promoting women's economic security. So stay tuned for more information, and please consider donating to JWI to help make this happen. Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you to all of you for participating in our session on financial literacy. Next up, we have a special message from Anthony Haddad.